Now, I was going through some photos, and of course, back in the day, I didn't really think to take photos of batteries for the future, but I did come across this photo, and this is 1985 at Parliament House, under construction, and this was the Royal Tour. But I've just put this shot in because of the cruise there, and there's all sorts of batteries going on there, but I just wanted to go, there's Princess Diana.
That's amazing.
And we can use that.
There.
It is, and I took that, so we don't need anyone's permission to use that. And then what I've done, fortunately, the behind the scenes photos I did take were with the old Pentax K1000 film camera, so luckily we've got the resolution to actually zoom in. So that shot there, you can see the belt in the foreground is a brand called Cine 60, and that was 30 volts to power the Colortran Mini Pro. And the recorder is a BVU 110 that would have a BP90 that we spoke about earlier. The crew on the other side, that's a Christie battery belt, and you're familiar with those. Unfortunately, neither of us have been able to get any of those for our collections, but they were quite common at the time. But you can see how much battery power.
So David, the BP90, was that driving the camera and the recorder?
It is in that case, yeah.
So you must have had a few of those.
Because the back of the camera would have had that on.
No, that's
otherwise.
why I wondered if they. So there was the battery belt was specifically for the light.
Yes.
And they just kept changing BP90s.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I thought they might have.
And that the Christie belt, Channel 9 didn't use Christie belts, or not in Melbourne anyhow.
And I guess the other thing we've forgotten to mention with all this is the fact that the cameras they didn't just come on. You had to have them on preheat. So. Your time as a cameraman, how long would the preheat last before it would knock the batteries down?
I can't remember, to be honest.
I mean, if you were doing something that needed immediate record, the only way was to have it in standby, which was half on technically.
That's right, yeah. Look, it was always a worry, to be honest.
Heads down and
and look, that's why
electronics off.
That's why I always went with that, because it just wasn't an issue and you were pretty much covered.
Well, I remember some quick start stuff we had to do, and we had as an assistant, and we had to have those recorders, just the heads down and the electronics off from the camera, and it would come up in about 5 seconds, but someone could be out of shot very quickly in 5 seconds.
Absolutely.
And if you weren't prepared for what was going to suddenly happen, it was a bit of a challenge trying to balance the power versus the operating time.
Absolutely. Skill.
It really was.
But I also remember, going off topic a little bit, I remember when that was on the back of the camera, it actually made it really easy to change to the wide angle lens, because the camera would just sit on its end in quite a stable position.
Okay, that's something I've thought of. So I've got to ask you, as we're at this point, and that technology, what would be your closest near to running out of battery power situation you may have had where you've just got through?
I can't think of a particular job, but it certainly happened, and it was usually at a press conference, I think. And of course the recorders, actually these you could adjust the alarm volume, I think, but the old BVU you couldn't.
Now, I remember doing quite an important job once, and I had the headphones hanging on the side, watching the VU meter. Next thing the alarm goes off, and you got that beep, beep, beep. Everyone just growled at you because it was such a penetrative noise, even though it wasn't high level. A bit like a mobile phone going off in a press conference. So I think we can all tell those stories.
Yeah, it was scary, to be honest. I'll just go to the next shot. This is a crop of the same image, but there's a bit of old technology there apart from the old wooden legs. But the guy sort of in the middle to the left there, the TK76, he's got a 30 volt Colortran Mini Pro, and he's got Christie belts batteries around his waist, and then the 3AP camera on the end. I guess that's probably the ABC there, and then the guy on the right hand side, he's got Christie belts as well.
You didn't get much more than about 10 minutes from memory on those Christie batteries. If you just had one going straight into a lamp, it was
also quick. Another thing I remember about those batteries, because we didn't have them, but did they had an external charger, I guess, was it?
Oh, they did,
yeah. Well, I remember the Christie batteries and the Cine 60, they actually used aviation plugs. So later on, a lot of modifications were done. They slotted in, and you actually screwed up a thread. But I'm pretty sure they had an aviation.
I remember doing a live cross once, and we had to use a Christie to run a light. It started to die halfway through. And it was just gradually, so we had to open the iris up on the camera just to try and compensate for it. So that was a bit of a challenge. It was one I can remember.
What do we got here? Oh, here's just Royal Tour again. That's just shows the importance of the battery power, and that's running the 30 volt Colortran Mini Pro up there.
I've got to say, what a great timepiece.
I know, that's the Southern
That's,
Cross Hotel, which
there
doesn't...
wouldn't be too many people with these photos, and
No,
yeah,
it was pretty amazing.
incredible.
Well, I was
Yeah.
only, I was quite young. I'm not going to say how young I was, but it was pretty bizarre going home and telling your parents what you'd been doing for the
It'd be
day.
interesting to know where that footage is now, if it's still around.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I presume it probably would be.
Well, in the there was a little less pressure in the Royal Tours because there was a pool arrangement, so they would have the networks would actually have a different position for each network. So someone would be, at the airport, someone would be at the entrance to the hotel, and we were at the entrance to the ballroom.
Yeah,
and
because logistically that'd be impossible to cover all those spots.
That's right,
that would be...
yeah, and that's how I took the shots, because I was assisting and there was actually not much to do. And I think I actually had a microphone under my arm. Technically, I was doing audio, but I was taking the shots on the old Pentax K1000 at the same
Amazing.
time.
With
So
the flash off.
I can't remember. It's a long time ago. Can't challenge my memory that much. That's just a stock shot. That'll just bring back some memories for a few of the people watching.
Yes, I remember the first one of those when they came out, early, about 1984, from what I remember.
Well, it's funny because that road case, that's obviously that camera, and the road
Yeah,
case is
yep.
there, and it's funny when you open it up, and it just has that smell. It just takes you back. So what have we got here? Okay, so this is our chief engineer in the newsroom, John Bremer.
Very clever guy.
Very smart guy,
Yep.
and the evolution of these batteries, there was always problems, and because NiCads, they could develop a memory,
Yes.
and they could be over discharged, and it was an evolution of the time of how do we sort of work with all this stuff, because out in the field, in a regional area or overseas, obviously you didn't have access, so you had to sort of do a bit of homework before you left.
And I was just going to say, that was the big challenge with these, because even though here it would indicate it's charged, you didn't know whether it might last 10
Exactly.
minutes or 15
Exactly.
minutes, because
Yeah,
the memory would build up in these things.
yeah.
That was a big problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, collaborating, he probably thought we were pains in the neck, but he was our go-to guy when we thought we could improve something. And with the BP90s, it was quite easy to over discharge them, and then they wouldn't charge up properly. So we were aware of that. But John came up with this great device, his design, I'm pretty sure it was, where you would plug, when it had gone flat in the camera, you would plug the BP90 into the slot here, and then it would discharge it.
Let's have a look. Yeah.
It would discharge the battery. I think it was something like 1 volt. It was quite measured. It was like 1 volt per cell, and then when it was discharging, the green light would be on, and when it was discharged, the red light would be on. But it would mean that, and then it would cut out. So it would mean that if you say started discharging a battery at night, because we used to charge our batteries at work and at home, but if it wasn't fully discharged when you say went to bed, you'd leave it on overnight, but you weren't going to damage the battery. And this extended the life of the batteries by quite a long time,
So basically that version flattened the battery completely.
to a measured level. I think it was 1 volt per cell or something,
Yeah.
and it didn't go
'Cause
beyond.
there was
Then it
another
cut out.
system out that put a burst of charge in there, which would
Okay.
also do the opposite. I
Okay.
think that was probably a safer kind of way to
I
the
guess so,
battery to
but
do
you're
it.
talking about there were 14 crews or something, and I think we
Yeah.
all had 5 or 6 batteries each.
Oh, easy.
So
yeah.
and that's just a small city, say compared to US or European standards. It's actually a pretty small number of crews. But John also engineered this, which is a voltage checker. So you plug the BP90 in that end,
Okay.
press the button, and then there would be a LED readout.
So
a percentage.
basically, if we could just...
Well, it was just important because it did put the
Yes.
battery under load, so you got a proper.
So basically you just put it in
Yeah.
here.
Yep.
And you'd push the button. Now this one's obviously completely discharged because it hasn't been charged for at least 20 odd
Yeah.
years that I know of.
Yes, so it
But
doesn't
it's
work.
just simply a case of
But it
pushing
would,
that button,
but it
and
would
the
line.
display would come up.
That's right. And if you had
Yeah.
been using this, and then the battery didn't charge to 100%, you pretty much you could believe it. It was time to sort of move on. But there was another modification he did. He would actually, I think, use the same certainly the same LED display, and he would actually modify the recorders, the portable recorders as well. They'd like cut out a little square, a rectangle, and buried that in there. So that gave us because before that we only had the beeping, the audible tone to let us know the battery was going
So
flat.
on the scale, how far down would that go before it was depleted? Like what graduation was it? So if you're down to 1 or 2 segments, that was sort of the end of it?
Yeah, that was pretty much it, yeah. Well, we didn't tend to test them.
Minutes, you might get another minute.
I don't know, we really didn't test, we didn't really use these while we were working. It was more the camera tests in the morning or taking the batteries off the charger. We would test to make sure.
Because I remember them in the BVU 50s, and I remember when it got down to about 1 or 2, the cameraman said to me, that's time to
but I guess
change the battery.
Yeah, and I guess it was good for business too because the batteries lasted longer.
Well, it gave you a bit of warning, didn't it? So
Yeah.
if you're in the middle of a press conference, you knew you'd have to make a decision to cut the power at some point.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
was everyone's nightmare.
Absolutely.
Where do you break the conversation to change the battery?
Yeah. Moving on to another era is the lithium ion era and the V-Lock. So I think when the digital Betacam came out in 94, 95, I think.
About 93, 94.
Yeah, and they were really power hungry because the drum was spinning so fast. And Sony came up with the V-Lock system, which I believe they never actually patented, which is why everyone's there's so many brands of it now, because Sony didn't protect their intellectual property. I'm not sure if that was deliberate or an oversight. But anyhow, these came along and they've been fantastic, and lots of variations and lots of different.
So I see on the side there's something that John was very ahead in.
Well, they started
designing.
they started incorporating the meters in the battery.
And that's almost technically what he did.
Pretty much,
some years
way
before.
ahead.
So he was well ahead of his time.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is not the Sony battery. This is another brand, but this gave you a couple of extra outputs, so you could plug accessories. So we had you could put a D-tap plug into here, and then
what did that end up going to? I never used those.
well, then at the other end you had a
So you had the standard
4-pin
12 volts.
XLR, so it could run all sorts of things. And then it had the like the BP90 plug, I guess. That was another output. And then this guy here that you would just plug into there's another way of access. And there's lots of variations of these as well. That
Again
goes
to the 4-pin.
4-pin, yeah. So these are with us, but now, and they haven't gone away.
Now, unlike the other batteries, I was fully aware they have to be very careful in transportation of those, because if they go off, because they can self-combust.
Well, I remember, when I was young, John, the technician, he actually said, you could weld with one of these batteries. He said there's a lot of potential to start a fire with these batteries. And I think the lithium, from what I, talking to the older camera guys, the day, lithium wasn't a recent discovery. They knew about it as a power source, but they also knew it was so unstable, and it was really just all the circuitry and the high-tech engineering behind it to actually sort of make them safe. But yeah, these
Well, I guess if you're storing more energy in a small space, there's going to be more chance of going unstable, I guess, if you look at it that way.
For sure.
So there was 2 sizes of those, wasn't there, from I recall?
There was
the full-size V-Lock.
a couple. Sony had a couple of different ones, and the smaller ones, I think, for some of the prosumer cameras, and then they had a bigger one.
How long would that run that digital Betacam camera for?
I can't remember. I think
a couple of hours.
I think this one. This was the last digital Betacam that they made, the 970, and this was slightly more power efficient than the other ones. I'm not sure. There was a new design, I think, and this was the one that had one of the first cameras to have lead-free solder. So whatever, I'm pretty sure I could put a 40-minute tape in digital Betacam, certainly record that, and a bit more from memory.
So about an hour then.
It depended if you were just continually rolling or stop-start on standby. So
yeah, well, certainly a big improvement on the previous type of battery.
But it's interesting that some things that haven't changed, is all these adapters, like trying to tap the power out of these batteries, and that hasn't really changed. We have the this piggyback device, so it's got a V-lock there, and that means that you could put 2 batteries on your camera. There's different batteries, that doesn't look right, and that means you get a hot swap, and you've got the D-tap, you know, so the customizing to get the power out of these batteries, you know, that hasn't actually really changed because there's so many devices that require
And there's a new generation out now that's...
Well, the one on the left here, that's the new Hawkwoods battery. That's pretty amazing. That's standing side by side. It's the one on the left is 150 watt hours, and the one next to it is also 150. So that represents a leap in technology as well. The fact that they have made it smaller. Here's another adapter. This one, you put the V-lock battery on there, and that gives you regulated power out as well. So what's the saying is the more things change, the more they stay the same.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
So when you had to take them like on aeroplanes and that sort of thing, what was the requirement for these
Well,
V-locks?
NICADs, I think we pretty much did whatever we wanted.
Yeah, because I remember going on a few trips and we never had to put batteries in quarantine, so
No,
to
but
speak.
But it was also the days when you could smoke on aeroplanes, you know, it was just...
True.
But then I think...
What's the requirement now for these V-locks?
I don't know. Look, I'm sort of... It changes, and I wouldn't sort of commit to telling anyone anything. I would say check the airline you're travelling with, check the country that you're in, but obviously be
it's
careful.
an issue that we didn't have to deal with in the past.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So look, I think we're pretty much there, but that just sort of spans the, I guess, the last 35 years of powering our cameras on the road.
I'll just mention one more thing. This is something that consistently can still be used.
Of course,
right,
yeah.
Back in the days of the 80s, this will supply the 12 volts through the 4-pin.
Yeah.
And I've even today, recently, seen still one of these driving a up-to-date camera, which is XD cam.
Well, they don't make them like that anymore.
I just thought I'd mention that since we're talking about power supplies and the fact that this is still in use and it would be at least 30 years old.
Okay.
Amazing.
Yeah, well, I think we'll sort of wrap it up, but I do like to mention some of the colleagues that I used to work with, and we mentioned Sam Humphries, the ex-Current Affair sound recordist who devised that belt, and then I have to say there was a Channel 10 cameraman, Barry Pullen. His trademark was he used to leave his car keys on the spigot of the camera to make sure he didn't leave anything behind. I assume that's why he did it, but anyhow. G'day, Barry.
Analogy, yeah.
All right, well, look, I think we'll wrap it up there.
Right.
And thanks for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed this presentation.